Hey, what's up, Shoot Extraordinary Conference? I hope that you guys have had an amazing 2 days of learning, growing, and becoming extraordinary with Lensbaby and all of our amazing speakers. We're going to wrap up the day with a bit of a Q&A panel with the entire team and answer your questions that you've had over the course of the last couple of days. A reminder, I am Michael Anthony. I am your host and MC and Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Lensbaby, and I'm going to give our speakers an opportunity to each introduce themselves, starting with co-founder Craig Strong.
I'm Craig Strong. I'm here with the important people, which is all of our users that are out creating amazing work. But I started Lensbaby back in 2003. With Sam Pardue and have been going ever since, but largely based on everything you've been telling us that you want. And I'm excited to be here with such great company and answer some of your questions.
Thanks, Craig. Dana, would you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Dana Lee, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. And I have been a photographer for about 10 years. And my specialty or genre is portrait and fine art photography.
Amazing. Thank you, Dana.
That's
Shelley.
all I have to say.
I'm Shelley Corbett, and I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I've been a photographer for 30 years, but the last 8 years of my life has been dominated by toy photography. Happy to be here.
Amazing. Thank you, Shelley. Kathleen.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Clemens. I'm a natural light nature photographer from the coast of Maine. I've been shooting since 2003.
Thank you, Kathleen. Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Kramer. I'm in St. Augustine, Florida. I've lived in Alaska for 29 years so, and I've been doing photography since I was about 16, shooting birds and flowers, and I'm still shooting birds and flowers. I also do weddings, but artistic floral photography is my thing.
Thank you, Jackie. Anne.
I'm Anne Belmont. I'm coming to you from the Chicago area, and I am a flower photographer and passionate about seeing the world up close and shooting with Lensbaby lenses.
Amazing. Thank you, Anne. Joe.
Hi, everyone. I am Joe, and I am a fine art lifestyle photographer. I've been doing this for just a little over 5 years. And I mainly photograph families, kids, and self-portraits. And I also do a little bit of nature work on the side.
Thank you, Joe. And Ute.
Hey, I'm Uta. I am in Los Angeles, and I'm a fine art photographer. I do portraits too, and I've been a photographer for the last 8 years. Discovered Lensbaby, I guess 5 years ago, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for being here as well. And thank you to our amazing panel for taking time today to answer your questions. I don't know about you guys, but I'm super excited about this. There's so many questions that I think Lensbaby photographers around the world constantly have, and I'm grateful that we are able to compile those for you here today. I'm going to start with one of the most simple questions for co-founder Craig Strong. Craig, why did you invent Lensbaby? Craig, you're on mute.
All right, I started it off well here. So I invented Lensbaby because I was in a rut. I had 10 years of being a self-employed photographer and had gotten really good at certain things in that, but wanted to challenge myself. And so you know, it was through happenstance, and I talked about that some in the keynote, that I happened upon this lens that was not an L series lens. It was not as you know, traditionally good as I could afford, and it opened up a whole new world of photography. So it was a happy accident on one hand, and yet I was ready for it as well. So it ended up really giving my photography the same kind of passion that I had in high school and college when I was just discovering everything about photography. All of a sudden, here was a whole new world, and that's how it started.
Amazing. It's so funny what happens when you kind of just go with the flow and see what happens with life. My next question, or our next question, I should say, from Agatha is going to be for the panel. So everyone will have an opportunity to answer this question. from Agatha. I would like to ask, what is the favorite Lensbaby product of our speakers, and what the most difficult thing is for them in shooting with Lensbaby optics? And we'll start this question off with Kathleen.
Great. Asking me to choose my favorite Lensbaby is like asking me to choose my favorite child. And I have 3 sons, and that the favorite varies by the day, sometimes the week. So, you know, that's pretty impossible. I can narrow it down to 2, possibly 3. The Velvet 85 is my favorite velvet, and the Sweet 50 has a piece of my heart. But I have just started shooting with the Spark 2.0. So you might want to talk with me in another week, because I think I have now moved into 3 favorites. As for difficulty, gosh, I think that sometimes people expect to get perfect results right away with a new lens, and they don't give themselves the time to really get to know a particular lens or optic. So, I mean, to get around that, I would suggest you just put it on your camera and leave it there. You know, don't shoot for a half hour and go, I can't do this. You know, leave it on there for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and really, really work that lens and see what you can do with it.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Kathleen. Anne, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Kathleen. It's like trying to choose your favorite child. I would say that the lens that I use the most for my photography is probably the Velvet 85. I have a very strong love affair with that lens. But the Sol 45 comes in a very close second. I love the freedom and the creativity of that lens. When I first got it, I thought, oh, I don't know, fixed aperture. I'm all about aperture. How could this possibly be the right lens for me? And about 30 minutes after I started shooting with it, I realized the potential that this lens had for really narrowing your focus and helping you push the boundaries of you know, what's in focus and what's in not, really truly using that selective focus. So I adore that lens. But, you know, I love all my Lensbabies. I think I own them all. So it's hard to pick favorites. And I think, you know, there's certain situations, certain subjects that you reach for a particular lens. And as far as difficulties, I think, you know, I also agree with what Kathleen said, that, you know, you just have to really practice. You have to get in there and really work with the lens. I think the thing that people most struggle with is understanding the focus. But there are so many tips that, you know, we can all share with you to help master that. So everything is possible. It just comes with practice.
How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, right?
Practice.
Jackie. Jackie, you're on mute.
My current favorite is the Spark, but it's followed by, or maybe on the same plane as, the Twist. I love the Twist because it has a lot of flexibility for me. I can get a twist, or I can get a really creamy effect with it if I really increase the magnification, put my filters or macro converters on. I like that it can go into the optic swap system, but I love the Burnside too. And then I do love my Sol 45. It's very unique. And I think I had one more in mind, but, you know, I have to say that I think, where do you get these ideas from, Craig? I think there couldn't be any more. And then you come out with something. And I just feel like getting to know a new one is so much fun. And I totally agree with what you said, Kathleen. You've got to put it on and leave it on. And then you'll become, you know, more masterful at getting the effects that you will be surprised with. So for right now, it's the Spark and the Twist.
Yeah, amazing. Dana.
You guys are all making me want to go shopping for new lenses. But right out of the gate, about 10 years ago when I started photography, I very early on was introduced to Lensbaby. So I've been shooting with Lensbabies most of my career as a photographer. And I started with the Sweet 50 So that one has my heart. I also love it because I'm a portrait photographer, so it's a great focal length for portraits. And I love the softness of the blur, just pairs really well with portraiture. So that's my favorite if you made me pick one.
Yay, she picked one.
Yeah, as far as difficulties, I think I still struggle with shooting at wide open apertures, like shooting wide with each lens and really nailing the focus, but I'm learning to embrace the imperfections as well. So
yeah, that's powerful. And that's so much of this journey, not only as a photographer, but as a Lensbaby photographer, is embracing the imperfection, because that's what we strive for, and understanding that perfect isn't actually real. Joe, what are your thoughts?
yeah.
Hey everyone. So I started using Lensbaby lenses from 2016-ish, around sometime. And my very first lens, baby lens, was the Edge 80. And at that time, I actually fell in love with free lensing. And that's one of the reasons why I started picking up my Lensbaby lenses, trying to get similar effects with how I used to freelance. But slowly over time, I introduced, I think I have most of the Lensbaby lenses as well in my collection, but to date, for over 3 years, I've been using my Edge optics. So now I have the Edge 35, and pretty much, I think I would say 90% of the time for my personal work, I use my Edge 35 optic. And then my Sol 45, I think, would come my second favorite. I say only second, only just because it's just different kind of work that I would generally use it with. So I think I would say Edge 35, then the Sol 45. And then when it comes to, difficulty in using these lenses, and I think I would just go back to what Kathleen said as well. The only reason I may struggle with a particular lens is because I have not practiced with it enough. And that lens right now, because I have a Sweet 50, and maybe I'll be looking at Dana for pointers, but I have the Sweet optic and I just haven't used it enough. Like I've tried it twice and I'm like, oh, I can't really figure out the focus here. And I gave up on it. So I'm like, yeah, of course, that's the only reason that, I find it difficult, because I used it twice and then I never put it back on my camera again. But on the other hand, my Edge or my Sol, it's on my camera 80-90% of the time. So of course it's, more, because the more I use it, the more I start to love it. So yeah, so that would be my answer in a summary.
Yeah, Joe, I totally relate to that, because as an Edge ambassador, I don't get the sweets at all. And so like, even though they might mingle on my camera for 5 or 6 minutes, like I don't get it. But that's the thing, what's so beautiful about this, it's not necessarily every lens is for every person.
Right.
Uta, please, what are your thoughts?
So I can just first of all, second whatever was said before. I also own, I guess, every Lensbaby. My favorite has been for a very, very long time the Edge 35. And then I tried the Velvet 28. And so far, I never liked the Velvet line because I wasn't a fan of the soft look. But I pushed myself when they set up a month. I committed to a month trying the Velvet 28, and surprise, I fell in love with it. So I get it when people say that one lens is what they love and another lens is the opposite. So for me, that was a very good experience to just commit to a lens for a month and then to see, wow, you can get results as soon as you get to know the lens a little better.
Yeah, there's a challenge in that, right? A month with a lens, you're going to learn all of the ins and outs of it, right?
Yeah, not only that, but you also start seeing in a different way, because there is no way out. You cannot deal with other effects. You cannot choose another lens. You cannot work with another focal length. You're stuck. So being stuck can sometimes be the best thing that happened, like COVID. I feel like in the first place, it's not what we want, but at the same time, so many beautiful things were born out of COVID. And that's the same with committing to one lens. Being stuck with a lens is a good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as I'm sitting here, I'm like, do I want to take on that challenge? 1 month with a Sweet? I don't know. We'll find out. Shelly, what are your thoughts?
I am a huge fan of the optic swap system, and I am a Sweet 50 lover. Like, if I had to just take my collection down to one, it would be the Sweet 50 with a macro attachment. I couldn't live without it. I don't know what you guys are talking about. It's not that tough. But like everyone has said, I mean, you have to just live with it for a while, and they all have a little bit of a learning curve. And my second favorite would be the Edge 50, but those two, if I had to just only choose them and that's all I could take on the road, those two cover all my bases. Love them both.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that, the same as you guys, like picking one is very hard, but we all have that go-to, right? Now, Craig, this will be an interesting question for you because you have the front line on this. You've experimented and played with these more than any of us combined. And so now the question for you is, what is your favorite and what is the most difficult?
Well, it should come as no surprise that I also have them all, and that I don't have any problem choosing my favorite child as it comes to Lensbaby anyhow. And that is a little off the beaten path here. I absolutely love the pinhole optic. And the reason is it is so different. I mean, Lensbaby started with something that was different than what I could do with any other camera lens, that I could buy at a camera store. So I was making them myself. And then if I want to diverge even further from that, I go back to the discontinued pinhole zone plate optic because it reduces things down to color, composition, and that's pretty much it, and contrast. And when I have to reduce my vision to communicate something real with that limited palette, I feel much more stretched, and that limitation, like Uta was saying about going out with just one lens for a month, if I'm limiting and taking focus out of the equation, although there's, you can see things in it, and it does have some sharpness in it, especially in the zone plate. But I love that reduction of my choices down to something really dark, something that really doesn't have the palette of a normal lens.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that one is, pinhole photography, as old as it is still something that's very new to people. So, if you don't know what that is, please Google it. I've experimented with myself, and, while it is very challenging, the reward on the backside of it is very wonderful. So our next question comes from Reed, and Reed's question is, what would your advice be for someone getting their very first Lensbaby? What would your advice be for someone getting their very first Lensbaby? And we'll start with Dana.
So my advice for someone getting their first Lensbaby would be to put it on your camera. Just kidding. And shoot. It's funny because every time I put a new lens on my camera, I always start out by shooting super wide, because that's how I like to shoot, with a wide aperture. But with starting out with a Lensbaby, I recommend shooting at a narrow aperture until you adjust to getting the focus right. And then with the blur, I use the Composer Pro 2 and the Twist, or not the Twist, the Spark, with the interchangeable optics. And so there's tricks with the focusing. For instance, the Composer Pro 2, I've learned to kind of twist the focus ring to make it really blurry and then bring it into focus, blur, focus, and then I take the shot. And it's just my way of kind of triple checking that I've nailed focus, or that I'm really seeing the focus. And then the third thing I would probably recommend is, it works for me with shooting Lensbaby, and I wish I had known this right out of the gate, is to shoot with my live view. It's easier for me to see that I've gotten focus on my live view as well versus through my viewfinder. So And again, my motto with Lensbaby is just embrace the imperfections and don't forget to have fun because you're creating, and the joy of the process, or the process of creating, should bring you joy, not just getting like straight out of camera award-winning shots. So. Yeah,
that's a great piece of advice, because anyone who's been in photography for more than 8 seconds knows that this is a journey, is such a journey. That's a great piece of advice. Uta, what would be your advice for someone looking to get their very first Lensbaby?
So my advice would be prepared to have a ton of fun, and don't expect great pictures right away, but just jump in and try it and enjoy it. And I think if you allow yourself time to get to know your lens, you will eventually be surprised by a picture where you're like, oh my Lord, this is mind blowing. I didn't expect that. And then start venturing out, start analyzing that picture and think about what is mind-blowing for you. Is it the way the bokeh is shaped, or is it the way that you don't have focus where you wanted it, but all of a sudden the picture has like a very emotional response for you? So I think just to break with your traditional expectations, and be ready for a new experience. If you can deal with that, you're ready for Lensbaby.
Yeah, that's a very great point. Kathleen, what are your thoughts?
Two, really. If you are used to autofocus and have never used manual focus before, then the first thing I would advise you to do with the Lensbaby right out of the box is to check your camera's diopter to be sure it is set correctly for your vision, or you're going to get really frustrated at what you think looks in focus is not going to be in focus. So I would do that. The second thing is that beta testing Lensbabies is one of the greatest joys of my life. And so when I first get one, you know, I have no idea really what I'm going to be able to create with it. And one of the things that I always do is experiment with that lens and a subject at all the different apertures. Okay, that's really the only way you're going to learn what that lens can do at a particular aperture, if you try it. All right. And put them all together up on your screen and really look at them and look at the difference. Look at the progression of blur. Look what the lens can do. And I think the more you do that, and when you look at the images all together, you'll sort of find your thing. You know, I like really slim selective focus and a lot of blur. That's not going to be for everybody. But, you know, if you don't try it and try all the apertures, you won't truly learn what you can do with the lens.
Yeah. Great points. Anne, what are your thoughts?
Sorry, had to unmute there. I think be patient. You know, as you said, Michael, this is a journey and it's not going to come right away. And we have to embrace that. You know, we just need to get out there and experiment. I mean, that's probably my best advice is experiment. And I love what Kathleen says, because I always tell this to my students too, that shoot it in all the apertures, because that's going to help you learn what the lens can do and help you hone in on what your style is. So really explore that lens and every you know, possibility with it. But be patient, and as Dana said, have fun. If we aren't having fun in our photography, then why are we doing it?
Yeah, very solid point. Did anyone else have any thoughts on this question?
I'd like to piggyback on what Kathleen said and say to pay attention to your glasses. If you've got progressive glasses, it's really hard to look through a viewfinder and see what's going on manual focus wise. Like you can frame a shot and use autofocus, but you might want to look at getting a separate pair of just single vision glasses at a, you know, I guess single vision, whatever your doctor says is single vision. And these are my single vision for the computer screen. And in general, I like looking through single vision better than progressive lenses. But when you put a camera up to your eye, you've kind of got to adjust, you know, where you're looking through the lens in order to see what's in focus. And then when you're trying to line that up with a slice of focus or a spot of focus, it can get very difficult.
I actually just wanted to add something in. So just going back with that, what I do when I was learning how to use my edge, because it's the slice of focus, and I really wanted the fine tuning of where my focus really falls accurately. I used to just go back and upload those images to my computer and then look at it that way and then see, okay, I took these 10 shots by shifting my focus just very little, and then just seeing, okay, so this is where the focus fell. And I think it just kind of really helps me just putting my images back on my computer as well, and then learning things that way. And then, if you're learning focusing, another huge tip, I think, if you photograph kids and people, human subjects, try to practice on still life and non-moving objects if you can, because so many times people come to me and they go that, okay, I've started using the Sol 45, but I cannot nail the focus, and I'm using this for my 1-year-old. Like, no, let's not get started with that first, because 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds are always going to be moving anyway. So try to understand how the lens works and where the focus falls by just practicing on an object that doesn't move and listens to you. So.
Yeah, that's a great point, because things that can't talk back, right?
Right.
Joe, and this next question is actually for you from Anitra. How do I get the best focus for portraits when I'm using the Sol 45?
Yeah, so I love using the Sol 45 for portraits, and because it's the center focus, it's the central focus point. I pretty much, again, just play with the focusing for my Sol 45 whenever I use it. But what has helped me, at least the way I like it, because I like moody portraiture, I like to work with it on darker backgrounds so that there is really no distractions or anything else in the background. If it's like a plain, simple background, it helps me to see exactly where I'm focusing on. And then I pretty much just adjust myself spatially, like going forward, going backwards. If I want the subject's eyes in focus, because if you're photographing a portrait, that's where you would typically be focusing on, then I would just literally, push, go forward, go backwards. And I'm really not a still photographer who just stands and then starts to start snapping. So I would just really use the space where I am in, and not just only working by moving the focus ring, but actually moving myself too, to make sure that I have the proper light, I have the proper composition, because sometimes I think if you're working on the focusing element, the light and the composition and all of the basics of photography just go out the window. And you're like, oh my gosh, I need to get the focus right. And you just forget everything else. But it's a package deal, right? Because you need to look at all of them, all of those elements together. So just making sure that, get your focus right, practice your focus on a non-moving object, know exactly what that Sol 45 does in terms of your focus. And say if you have a blank wall, and that's where you're trying to focus, take a photograph of a portrait, like you're trying to do a portrait, then maybe place a flower vase in that spot. Take a photo and then replace that with the human subject so that you know exactly what you will be getting. So that's what I would do, at least if you're someone who's just getting started with the Sol 45. And I really like the fixed aperture. I mean, I think for me, because I like the whole underexposed look, it really works beautifully with a pocket of light, especially like harsh light. I think the Sol 45 just does a beautiful job. I just place my subject in a pocket of light and expose for the highlights that is exposed for my subject who is in that pocket of light. And the fixed aperture does its work. And, I just adjust the shutter speed and I'm good to go. So yeah, so my Sol 45 is my to-go for portraits.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I often think about, we're working within the parameters of the equipment that we have. And this comes back to many of your points in that, learn that lens, understand that lens, be able to be best friends with that lens. And you will discover in time, obviously being patient, a very important virtue in this process, that in every situation, you're going to be able to understand, how do I adjust? How do I get to that place that I find the focus that either I want or that I need. And I think finding focus is one of the questions that we get the most when it comes to Lensbaby lenses, because as a manual lens, many people have not stepped in that foray. And so one of the questions, this is an open question to the panel, is when you are first discovering how to use manual focus, what are some tips?
So I would like to answer that question because I have one point that wasn't covered yet. When I want to make sure with clients that I really get my focus right, what I do is instead of capturing just one shot, I set my camera to multiple exposures with hitting the shutter button once. And that way I make sure that I at least have one picture where I have focus where I need it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Does anyone else have any thoughts on finding focus with a Lensbaby? Jackie?
Yes, one of the things is some people have focus peaking on their cameras, which is very helpful. And I also personally like to do what Dana mentioned. I do a lot of flowers and I don't usually use a tripod out in the field. So what I do is I just put the strap around my neck and gently pull the camera against it and shoot in live view and use the magnification so that I can really see what's going on. And also I wanted to mention that I see a lot of people starting at extremes, extremely wide open and extreme tilts. And it's their first Lensbaby and they don't understand and they get frustrated too easily. Start straight, start without a tilt, and don't start wide open, especially if it's your first, and don't throw things away. Because that's the beauty of Lensbaby is when you see things in Lightroom or whatever you're editing in, it's quite surprising and beautiful. So I think those are my tips.
Yeah.
I just had one more thing to add. So because I do quite a bit of self-portraits with Lensbaby lenses too, that is one of the most, most asked question for me as to focusing on any, human subjects or non-human subjects itself is difficult when you get started with the Lensbaby lens, especially when you've never used manual focusing. So how do you get the focusing, when you're turning the camera on yourself? So to me, one thing that has actually helped is just put a blue tape. I use just the blue tape on a wall, and I would put it where I think I want my focus to be, and I would go stand in that spot. So, I mean, you have objects and things that you could also place, but I've figured that, having that blue tape, because it's small enough, but it's also seen, really helps you to narrow that focus, especially if you're using, edge or sole, where the focusing can be really, it's just a matter of like fine tuning, and your focus doesn't really fall on the soft edges, but, it's more sharper. So I don't know if, it may help someone.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I used to do a lot of self-portraiture as well, and it is a trial by fire for sure. So, as you're doing that, and especially finding that focus, that's a great tip. One of the things I used to do as well. Does anyone else have any thoughts on finding focus with Lensbaby? Kathleen?
Yeah, two things. If you're shooting macro with your Lensbabies, then be sure that you are not closer than the minimum focus distance of your lens or optic. Right, I see that a lot in workshops. Let's say you're using the Sweet 50, and without adding macro, the minimum focus distance is 15 inches. So if you're in 7 inches away from your subject, you're not going to get focus. I'm not going to get focus. Nobody is. The other thing is that when you're tilting, remember, a little bend goes a long way. Okay, you don't have to tilt to the edge of the frame. You don't really want the focus on the edge of the frame anyway. So small tilts off center.
Yeah, great.
I think also with the velvets, that's a whole separate issue with focusing. I think one of the big mistakes that happens when people are trying to learn focus with any of the 3 velvets is that they focus wide open, and you're going to have so much glow in there if you're focusing at 1.6, 1.8 that you're not going to be able to see the focus. So make sure you're doing your focusing at f4, or some people like f5.6. Establish your focus, and then you can start playing with aperture and changing it. But you're not going to be able to see it if you're wide open. So I have so many people that email me that question, I can't get the focus with my velvet. What am I doing wrong? And it's usually because of trying to focus in those lower apertures.
Yeah, that's a great point. And actually a great transition into our next question from Linda. And Linda asks, I just bought the Velvet 28. I want to learn how to use it better. Can you give me any tips? And that one, Anne, if you wouldn't mind, what are your thoughts?
The Velvet 28 is such an amazing, brilliant lens because, you can go from shooting macro at as close as 2 inches and you can have, amazing glow in those lower apertures, but then you can, shoot wide angle landscapes with it and go to complete sharpness from edge to edge. So I think, again, it's just a matter of doing that same thing of experimenting with apertures, trying different things, shoot some macro and then turn around and shoot a landscape and try it in all the apertures. I actually love shooting my Velvet 28 in those lower apertures and getting that sort of magical fairy tale look to a landscape. But I've also seen work where, it's shot at f/16 or at f/22 that's just amazingly sharp. So I think the beauty of that lens is that you have so much versatility. It's, I'm excited to travel with that lens because, I can do a landscape and then I can turn around and do a macro. So, but experiment again. I think that's just the key to so much about Lensbaby.
Yeah, that's a great point. Does anyone else have thoughts on the Velvets?
I'd say with the Velvet 28, and especially if you're shooting wide open, use the focus scale. Like first go out, put it on a tripod, make sure that the focus scale is what you think it is, that 6 feet is 6 feet and 30 feet is 30 feet and 12 inches is 12 inches. Once you get closer than about 3 feet, the focus scale is less effective. But I generally am just looking down at my lens and seeing that, hey, I'm about 12 feet from my subject and I know that the scale is accurate here. And so I'm just going to set it there and until my subject moves. I don't really worry about focusing, and that makes things much quicker. Also with the Velvet 28, the underlying detail at the brightest apertures is very, very sharp. It's got a concentration of the energy inside of that glow that is very small, like 90% or 80% of that energy is inside in, if you shoot a star, you get this big glowy halo around it, but the center of that halo is the star, or is what you would expect with a normal lens. And so you try to utilize that, because the other velvets in the corner, they're not so clean in terms of that concentration of energy. In the center they are. But how can you use that edge-to-edge underlying detail in your images? And this is the next step after you've kind of learned the lens. But just keep that in mind, that the Velvet 28, like Anne said, you can stop it down and get corner-to-corner sharpness. But even wide open, your underlying detail is very sharp. So keep that in mind.
Craig, one of the things that I think is really important, because for many photographers who are probably watching this, who are just now experimenting and learning manual focus, they don't know what a focus scale is. Can you break that down for us real quick?
Sure, let me see if I've got something here. Well, this old Nikon 50, what was that? No, this old Nikon 50, you can see right here, we've got meters and feet. And so when you're looking down on your lens, especially if you're shooting using the LCD or the back viewfinder tilted out like a view camera, you're also looking down on the top of your lens where you've got the meters and feet. And so lining up the indicator, the line on the lens with your meters or feet with what you see or estimate is your distance to your subject is what I'm talking about.
Got it. Thanks. And I think that'd be really helpful for a lot of people who are just now discovering this. One of the most beautiful things about Lensbaby is we get to make magic in our cameras, right? We get to see live what is happening. In traditional standard photography, not so much. course, we can take it into post-processing and play with it and create things there. But so much of this journey is doing it in camera. Now, that said, I always look at photography and all the different assets that we have at our disposal as tools. And one of those tools is post-processing. And we have an amazing question from Jen. And Jen asks, what post-processing tools are best for Lensbaby? Jackie, what are your thoughts?
I would say anything. I don't see why you would have to have a preference. If you like Lightroom and Photoshop, that's my preference. But that's I don't think that I would change my workflow because I'm shooting with a Lensbaby rather than a traditional lens. If you like to apply Topaz to it or any of the Nik plugins or Capture One or anything, I think you can achieve whatever you want. And I think what you alluded to, Michael, is that we get so much in camera that we'd have to do very little in post-processing. I know my session in this is all centered around post-processing, but that's just because all these amazing images come in through the Lensbaby, and I just combine them in Photoshop in artistic ways. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I always do that. So my Lensbaby images require very, very little. The colors and the way Craig described the velvet effects with the glow, I don't want to remove that. I want to accentuate it, and it takes very, very little to really kind of make it, bring out its best.
Yeah, great points. Does anyone else have thoughts? Uta?
I can only agree with what Jackie just said. I feel the same. I do very little in post-processing, and I know my puppy is super annoying, so I guess I cut it for now, all right?
No problem. That's the world that we live in right now, and I think it's both hilarious and, one of those things that we go, all right, it is what it is. Does anyone else have any thoughts about post-processing? Dana?
So I agree with Jackie as well that the Lensbaby lenses do a lot of the work. And because I like to shoot really emotive, moody type portraits and portraiture, the lens does a lot of the work for me. But I also like that when I pull it in, my post-processing program is Lightroom mostly. There are certain tools that I like to use. Obviously, I do a lot of black and white photography, so converting it to black and white. And then the clarity and texture sliders, I love the way those pair with Lensbaby lenses. So the new texture slider, newish, in Lensbaby adds something kind of extra, I guess, gritty to the blur. So that's something I commonly do. And again, the clarity, I love using the clarity brush on where my focus fell. I'm just brushing a bit of clarity to kind of draw more attention to that. But I completely agree that those are probably my easiest images to post-process is my Lensbaby lenses because it's infused all the mood for me already. I just have to kind of tweak a few things.
Yeah, amazing.
I'd like to add, regardless of what you use, go into your, like Kathleen said, use all of your apertures when you're out shooting, but also when you're in post-processing, take that slider, go all the way with it. Don't be shy. Whether it's your white balance or your contrast or your saturation, vibrance, whatever it is, even the clarity is really fun. You go all the way to the left, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on there? And, but go all the way, see what each of those do, and then find what it is that you connect with in software. Lensbaby is a tool. And then if you combine that with other tools, you can really make that sing in a way that reflects the way you want to represent your vision of the world.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Such a great point. As we continue to move on here, the next question, and Shelley, I'm going to ask this to you, is how do you get the person, place, or thing that is in front of your camera exactly the way that you want it?
I love that question because I don't. I read that. I'm like, it's a journey. It's an exploration. It's a happy moment. It's a happy accident. It's always you just never know what you're going to get with a Lensbaby. You take it out in the field, you put your subject out there. I'm lucky my subject doesn't move unless it's falling over, and that's on me. And you just play with it. And unlike Kathleen, I do crank my as much as I can. I want my focus way over to the side. I mean, I play with it. I did like what Craig did when I first got going with photography, is I got on an iPad and I just edited all my stuff there, and I cranked everything to every side and just blew it all up, and then figured out what I wanted and brought it all back. And so I think that's what you have to do, is you have to just go crazy and then rein it into something that reflects you. So when I go out in the field and I take my toys and we're out having an adventure, it's I have a vision. I put my lens on, I take the photo, and what I get is somewhere else. And I'm always happy with that. That was a ridiculous answer, but we're going to go with it.
No, but it's so true, right? And often we walk into these situations with an expectation of, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to do that thing's going to be there. But circumstance often shows up, and we recognize, like, we have to pivot, we have to make adjustments, we have to be willing to say, okay, this isn't what I wanted when I stepped into this, but it's even better now. Or sometimes it's worse. And that's the reality of this entire thing, is it's a process, right?
Absolutely.
Did anyone else have any thoughts on? Go ahead. Anyone else have any thoughts on how you get that thing in front of your camera exactly how you want?
I would say go in with a vision and be willing to walk away with a different vision. Every once in a while I go in and I get exactly what I was after, but 99 times out of 100, I walk away with something unexpected. And it's great to have an expectation and to know what you want. But then you have to be able to bend and shift and head in different directions along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so much of what it is, right? Being willing to see what happens. The next question is for the entire panel. How do you find your style? And I think that we'll start with Joe on this one. How do you find your style? One of the things that's really beautiful as someone who gets to see all of your work all of the time is that I get a look and go, I know who took that photo. And I also know that as a photographer, it takes a very long time to get to that place. And so I'm so curious, how do you find your style? And we'll start with Joe.
Yeah, so it definitely takes a lot of time and a lot of practice. But more importantly, I think from personal experience, it is more about connecting with yourself and figuring out what exactly you like and who you are as a person, so that your images reflect that. Because if you just pick up the camera and you don't really have a vision, but you're just out there because you just want to take an image, I mean, it can be fun in the beginning, but you're just shooting without really a purpose. So if you really want your images to have a purpose, a vision, a story, and I'm always emphasizing story in my work, you just have to know what you are really drawn to the most. And that takes time. Like, I mean, like 5 years ago, I know I was drawn to, oh my gosh, this is so bright and airy and so beautiful. Like, this is so beautiful. I would look at dark and moody portraits and I'm like, this is beautiful too. How do I figure out what exactly I am drawn to? So I think just tuning in with yourself and maybe doing everything, just like how Craig mentioned, with how you may play around with post-processing, but also if you are really a new beginner shooter, like with your camera, just, take portraits, take lifestyle images, shoot flowers, shoot whatever you can, and do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I think just doing that, you will, in the process, be able to connect with yourself to see what you like. And just like I said, for me, I have always been drawn to just the whole moodier work with like textures and just the soft blur. I really like the soft blur. And that didn't come right away. Just the more I did that, and I would play with something and I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I really like, not that. So then I would do things like, if I picked, say, my Sol 45, I would be like, oh, this is what I did. And this is what I really fell in love with. So which means I need to do more of this. So just, figuring that out is the more important part. The other thing I think would be, just regardless of what lens or camera, whatever you use, learn to be a better photographer also, because that is also, the most important thing. Learn about light, learn about composition, and all of that again comes with practice, because all of those technical elements combined together, if you have them straightened out, everything else becomes, easier. I mean, I wouldn't say easy, but it becomes much more easier, because Lensbaby is a tool, and having all those technical elements worked out will really help you explore your creativity and find what you are drawn to, or find your voice much more.
Yeah, those are all incredible tips, Joe. Does anyone else have any thoughts on finding your style? Jackie, oh, you all do. Okay, we're going to get everybody. Jackie, go ahead.
Yeah, I would love to talk about this, because it's something that comes up often in conversations about, I recognized your image, I knew it was yours, and my initial reaction is, but how? I don't think I have a style, and I'm kind of proud of the fact that I do a lot of different things, and I like to bring out the mood or the personality in my subject. And if my subject is dark and more mysterious, that's what I want to convey. If it's not about the mood that I'm in necessarily, it's about my subject, whether it's a person or a flower. And I kind of liken this to a buffet of food. So if I went to a buffet and there was Italian, Greek, fish, Indian food, what am I going to be drawn to? Am I going to sample everything? More often than not, I probably am. But there's some people that are always going to only go for lobster, only going to go for spaghetti or lasagna. And if you're that kind of person, then you should do what makes you happy. I think that, when doctors tell us that we have to avoid certain foods for our health, that's one thing, but that does set limitations and parameters on our choices. And I want to say that, but also draw the distinction between judges of photography and doctors who are trying to keep us healthy. Judges of photography try to tell us what they think, and they're judging based on their own parameters, on their own likes and dislikes. And if they like things sharp or totally in focus, then they're probably not going to fall for my Lensbaby images, and that's okay, because I don't have to live by what judges say or what they think. And so if I fall flat in any kind of a competition, it's totally fine with me, because I shoot for myself. And
that's such a great point.
So my style is all over the map. And so I can't say that I have a cohesive website, but I can actually say that I have subcategories. And so I have some that are more of the floral pastels, and I have some that are dark and moody. I have some that are more the elegant, and then I have the wild. And so within each one, I have those categories, but I don't think overall I have a certain style. But that's the way I view myself, is that I don't want to be boxed in.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I resonate with that, and I'm sure many people appreciate that. Dana, what are your thoughts?
I love this conversation. I'm going to echo some of what Joe said, that I agree that it takes a lot of time to get to a place where you've really found your style, or, as we hear a lot in the photography world, your voice. That thing that kind of someone can look at your photos and say, I know who took that. That's your voice coming through, or, parts of you. And for me, I'm going to get a little vulnerable here, because it's the only way I know how to answer this question. But I, shot things for a long time that didn't necessarily make my soul sing, really bring joy to my heart that I was capturing. And so I kind of took a step back and looked at my work, as a whole, and looked for themes in my work. And themes that I saw in my work were, I shoot mostly children, photograph mostly children. So I saw themes of wonder and magic and just a sense of like peace, and then a sense of vibrance and playfulness. And for me, it came down to really figuring out my why for why I do what I do. And figuring out that why for me was a huge step forward in just capturing what it is that really makes me feel like I'm creating art from a deep place within. And just to end, my husband and I did foster care for a lot of years. We fostered about 15 different children in the Portland metro area over the course of about 5 years. So that was a big part of my why, because I saw one side of childhood that wasn't pretty and magical and colorful and playful. It was very sad. And then I see the other side of childhood, with my own children growing up in a home full of love and their needs are met. And so that is a big part of me finding my style, is really seeing those themes and capturing those moments from a place of, this is why I do what I do. I want to capture how beautiful and magical childhood can be. So I know I'm getting really deep and introspective, but that's kind of where I've landed.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Like I think about it like having purpose and intention. What drives us in this place where, unfortunately, this can become mundane. Being a photographer, doing it all the time, it can become this thing where we feel like, why am I doing this? Why am I showing up? And having something that I feel like is greater than us can often be that catalyst for continuing to push forward and being willing to step into identifying and creating. And whether or not style comes from that, I think that's a side point when the intention is about, how do I do something that's for me or for others that brings value to the world? So that's really beautiful. Anne, I know you had some thoughts about style.
Yeah, this is like my favorite conversation in the world. And in fact, my presentation is really all about kind of this idea of finding your heart. And to me, that is very connected with finding your style. So I think that when we begin this journey of photography, and we really do have to look at it as a journey, and one that happens in small increments. But when we begin, we take in a lot of influences from other people. We gather ideas. We are inspired by all kinds of things. And then at some point, I realized in my journey that I just had to start trusting myself and trusting my heart and trusting the way I emotionally reacted to my subjects. And I think, that a lot of that comes from really honoring where you come from in life and taking all your life experiences. Just, what Dana was saying about how, she's seen both sides of childhood, taking those ideas, and seeing how they feed into your photography, because I believe that our photography really becomes a culmination of everything we've experienced in our life, all the way back to our childhood. And if you can begin to look at that, it'll help bring your heart into the process. So I know that for my own personal life, the reason that I love doing what I love is that I have a very deep connection to nature that started in my childhood. And I also have a career as an art therapist, which really influences the way I see my subjects, the way I connect, the way I, want to photograph emotionally. So by honoring our past and our journey, we can bring our heart into our photography. So watch my presentation, it's all there.
Very, very, very well said, Anne. Thank you so much. Craig, I know you have thoughts.
Well, I think this is an interesting way. We're all kind of coming at this from a different direction than the visual side. Like we're not saying, go try this particular lens or try this certain thing, but the foundation that I'm hearing that I resonate with is find out what's important to you. Like, what do you care about? What do you see? The things that you see, those are the things that you have a history with, those things that you notice day after day after day, that you have some vested interest in understanding. So find out what you see and then explore, how do I see it? How do I see it in a way that communicates the truth of that subject matter to your viewers?
Great points. Anyone else have any thoughts on finding your style? Kathleen?
Yeah. I think it's important not to think of style as a destination. I think you need to understand that style is a process, and it's going to ebb and flow. And, you know, your style today may not be your style from 6 months ago. It might not be your style for, you know, 6 months ahead. You need to experiment, enjoy the process, and I don't think you especially need to categorize yourself with a particular style.
Yeah, very valid point. And that kind of harkens to what Jackie said. So much of this is about just going with what's present for you. And I fear that as the photography industry continues to change and adapt, that people are afraid of that, which kind of leads into our next question is, how do you put yourself in a position, and maybe this steps into the vulnerability piece of it, how do you put yourself in a position to be willing to go against the grain in an industry that has kind of laid out the baseline of what is acceptable? This is an open question for the panel, so please, anyone who would like to answer that. Kathleen, go ahead.
Oh, well, I think you need to stop shooting for other people if that's an issue. There's only one person that my work really needs to please, and that's me. You know, it's nice if you get likes, you know, on Facebook. It's nice if other people like your work, but I have a lot of images that I truly love that really don't resonate with a lot of people, and that's okay. You know, so shoot for yourself. You know, and just keep a part of your work for contests, camera clubs, where things have to be more pigeonholed into a particular style. But keep your heart and yourself open to shoot for you.
Yeah, really great point. And so much of that is about you. Shelley, what are your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. And I don't shoot for camera clubs or competitions. I shoot for myself, and I shoot for myself. That's who I shoot for. And when I look through the camera and I take a photo and it makes me happy, or better yet, it makes me laugh, that's all I care about. Everything else is gravy. And everything that everyone is saying about digging deep, telling your own stories, expressing your joy, your pain, whatever that is in your photographs, that is what it's all about. That's how you found your style.
Yeah. Uta, yes.
So the puppy is sleeping. We can talk again. Finally on my lap. I wanted to say, for me, it was actually important to let go of everything for a long time. So I tried too hard to find my style for a long time. And then I gave up, you know, and I was like, okay, fine. I don't know what it is. And then I did what a lot of people have said here before. I started shooting for myself. I just did capture pictures that were interesting for me. And I really stopped publishing pictures for a long time. And that helped me to find my style and to allow myself to do what I actually want to do, instead of trying to please other people and to pretend I have a style at a stage where I didn't have a style.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Joe?
I just wanted to say that this is such a great conversation. I actually teach a workshop that's all about rule breaking, and just all different ways to break rules and just kind of go away from like traditional way of doing things. So this is like my absolute favorite topic. For me, just going back to what Shelley and Kathleen said as well about shooting for yourself. Even if I'm shooting, say, clients, I try to make sure that I'm using my Lensbaby lenses, even though they may have never seen an image produced that way, you know? So, and then when it comes to personal work, obviously there's a little bit more that you could do when it comes to personal work with getting creative. For me, I get bored super fast. So I'm a person that I just get bored so fast. So I always have to keep changing things and coming up with new ways to do, even if I say take a portrait with my H35 and a month later, I am like, okay, this is too easy. What do I do next? What do I change about my lens that can make the image appear different? Or what do I do different in that same space? Because I often shoot in the same space. When it comes to photographing my kids indoors, I'm in the same room, all the year, and especially with COVID too, right? So I'm always trying to come up with the new ways, whether it is going back to the photography basics, or whether it's tapping into the emotions, of my kids, me, or anyone whom I am photographing, just going back to this very emotions, and like how Dana talked about, just exploring your why of what you are doing. I think just digging back to that really helps you to get more creative and to keep challenging yourself to experiment, basically.
Yeah, that's a solid point, which kind of actually leads into the next question. And this one's for Craig to start with. And of course, all of you can please interject. Craig, talk about the value of personal projects.
Well, Lensbaby is a personal project. And I think it goes back to what we were just talking about, that find something that's important to you and find something that's accessible to you and make some progress. If you're thinking about going, your personal project is traveling someplace that you're not going to be able to travel right now, or you've got this thing out on the horizon that may not be possible because of your circumstances or because of the world circumstances, that tends to be, and I say that because I've lived in that space of, hey, I want to go photograph in the jungles of Brazil or Peru or whatnot. And while I've done that, it took years to get there, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And yes, it was great, but it was a very short amount of time. And so finding something close to home and being able to go there, go back to it on a daily basis, or over the course of the summertime, or whenever it is, when you can say, hey, I'm going to spend a month with this lens, I'm going to do, challenge myself in a certain way. It is going to be limiting, similarly to Uta and her project with the Velvet 28. Personal projects, you can't leave them super wide open. So find your paradigms that you're saying I'm staying within, and then go do it and push those paradigms and try and make that work for you. I think if we go with a satchel full of lenses and 3 bodies, and am I going to shoot video or I'm going to shoot stills? I don't know. Am I going to shoot black and white? And we get all bogged down. So make those decisions before you ever find yourself out shooting, so that you've got a limited palette to work with, and come back and evaluate. If that's working, great, continue that and continue to push it. Does it challenge you? Is it accessible? Documenting our lives, documenting the people that are closest to us. If you want to do portraiture, photograph your partner, or your kids, or your neighbors, or the people that you see at work on a regular basis. Like get out of your comfort zone with your camera, but be in a space that's accessible. Be with people, be with a subject matter that you know or that you want to know better.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like the way to step into that might be like having a little bit of intention, coming back to the why and that reason. One of the things that I'm curious about as we step into this idea of personal projects is, how do you really challenge yourself in that, right? Because so many of us, we have our side jobs, we have our day jobs, photography is a hobby, maybe it's even our profession. When you are surrounded by so much life, what does it take to really step into a personal project? Does anybody have any thoughts? Jackie.
I would love to. This is a topic that's near and dear to me, because I try to encourage everybody to live their legacy rather than leaving a legacy. And in doing so, I think that you can create a personal project that can be small and finite, or it can be large and long lasting. And it's whatever you can do. If you're working full time and you've got a lot of kids at home, then maybe you can only do one small thing. But I think more than anything, it needs to be meaningful. I think a personal project that's legacy building can be just one step along the way. It doesn't have to be something that you take on and you do forever. But as long as it's something that means something to you, whether you touch somebody with it, whether you make a statement or send a message, it could be about the world, it could be about the environment, it could be about your family. It could be about almost anything. And it might just be for yourself. It might be for a neighbor. It might be for a group of people. But I think the result really needs to be that you're making a difference in someone's life, whether it's your own, one other person's, or many other people, something that you feel is important. And the photography is really just a tool. And I think it's an opportunity for us to say, what is important to me? What do I want to take? Do I want to take a stand on something, or do I want to reach out and touch someone? It could be that your neighbor is at the hospital and you're going to take pictures of her hydrangea bush because she's missing the bloom. We have people in my florography group online that do all kinds of things like that. Others create, something that is intended to bring light and to uplift others in the world. And some people want to send a message about the importance of fill in the blank, whatever it is. And I think that it's a great way for us to say, well, I'm going to take this topic, whatever it means, and I'm going to use X lenses or optics, like Craig mentioned. And you really can say, this is an opportunity for me to learn how to do videography, or to really push the Velvet 28 and all of its ranges. And Michael's a rainbow. Is he a rainbow for everybody else?
Yes.
This is the way I see him every day.
Yeah, there we go.
That's the legacy. So anyway, that kind of is how I would answer it. Is a personal project can really make a difference in your life and in other people's lives as well. And at the same time, it can really push your photography beyond.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Dana.
A personal project for me is usually born out of my need to slow down, because I feel like just for me personally, as a mom of 5, and I'm just going all the time, trying to take the pictures and school the kids and raise the kids. And so my last few personal projects have been born out of just taking a portrait a month of my children. And then it takes the pressure off of me of needing to capture a ton of stuff. I just can kind of slow down and hone in on this one thing. And sometimes personal projects come on a whim to take pressure off of myself, and again, to slow down. We went on this epic family vacation pre-pandemic that was over a month long, and I packed a bag full of all my Lensbaby gear, all my lenses, my camera, just like I should have had that backpack insured. And we got to where we were going. We spent, some time in Hawaii for an extended amount of time. And we got there, and it was too much pressure for me. I was like, we've planned this trip for, this amount of time, and I just want to be present with my family. And so literally spur of the moment, the first day I was like, I'm going to make this a cell phone adventure, and I'm going to capture this trip magically and artistically with my cell phone. And I'm not at that time was not an iPhone photographer. So I guess my point is, I never opened my camera bag one time on that whole trip. It was just a project was born out of this need to just kind of slow down and be present and take the pressure off of myself. And it forced me to learn a new skill. And, I'm glad I took that risk, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. And, it reminds me of something Chase Jarvis once said, and that's the best camera is the one with you, right? Sometimes it's not about all the gear. It's not about the 12 lenses. It's not about, and that stuff gets in the way sometimes. Let's be honest. Like, I don't know about you guys. I carried a 70-200 on a Canon 5D Mark III for a whole day one time. My neck hurt so bad the next day I couldn't move it, right? As we wrap up and head towards the end of our conversation here, one of the questions that came up, which I think is really interesting, and this is open again to the entire panel, but I think that we will start with Dana, is what does the future of photography look like in your eyes?
Wow. No pressure. I know y'all are glad you didn't go first right now. Can you say the question one more time?
Yeah, what does the future of photography for you look like?
For me, the future of photography, that's an interesting question for me, because I photograph mostly my own children, who are not going to be small children, amazed at the wonder of the world, for, forever, right? They're growing. And so the future of photography for me looks like exploring new genres of photography. As Anne was saying, kind of continuing to explore and find my heart, you know, as my life continues to change and things evolve. And just continuing to shoot for myself and enjoy the creative process and continue in my journey to let go of perfection and just create because it's what I love to do and it brings me joy.
Yeah, powerful. Anyone else have thoughts about the future of photography? I know Craig does.
Well, I also wonder what the future of Lensbaby is going to bring for us too. I feel like it's hard to predict the future because, yes, obviously I want to continue what I'm doing for as long as I can do it, but I also want to be open to the moment and open to possibilities and new lenses and new ways of seeing the world. So, I think it's just not, there's nothing static about this process. It's always evolving. It's always changing. So, yeah, I'm excited about what the future will bring.
Well, and I think we're looking at the future of photography right here. Who would think that we'd be at a multi-thousand person conference with people all over the world on Zoom? And how are we going to present ourselves here? How, I think we're going to see, webcams become something different than they are right now. Cell phones back in 2006, 2008, my business partner and I went to a Info Trends meeting, and they talked about how it's, people are really going to be migrating from SLRs to cell phones. And I came out of the meeting and I said, never going to happen, never. And now you look at it and, I thought it'd be like incremental changes. And within 3 or 4 years, we were talking 8 megapixels. And now, the megapixels don't matter so much once you hit 12, and you've got HDR built into your phone that is still a pain to do on most DSLRs. Like, it's not so much about megapixels as it is about the information from the highlights to the shadows. And so there's this ever evolving movement, and the fact that everything does video now. It's 4K. Like, who's ever going to watch it on a 4K screen? Like, nobody except the person that edited it, essentially. So the constant evolution and change is it's hard to predict. 2008, I said, no way will a cell phone in any way get somebody that's shooting on a 36 by 24 inch sensor to take real pictures with it. Now, that was disproven. So it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell what's next, but I do think that it's constantly going to evolve. It's constantly going to change. And what we're doing right here in 2-3 years, we're going to have options that we don't currently have. Me having a green screen behind me and going out and filming stuff out of focus with my Lensbaby Twist is an option, but it's not accessible to everybody because most of our screens or our cameras aren't going to be that great. I'm using a DSLR, so those things are going to become accessible that aren't right now, and it's just going to become part of the language. Apple targeted photography and said, we're going to take this over, and in so doing, they made photography the language of the youth. Like, my teenage boys, like, that's how they communicate. Is it inspired when they're keeping a thread or whatever it's called, a streak going on whatever that thing is that they do? No, usually not. But it is a language. It's a visual language that wasn't there 10 years ago, and that's just going to develop. And we're right at the beginning of that.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. Like, even though photography is this thing that's 100 years old, and many of us have been doing it for a very long time, it's ever evolving. Like, the fact that I now carry a camera with me everywhere I go in my phone, which, to be honest with you, is my preference in shooting these days. is amazing because, again, I don't have to lug around the gear. Does anyone else have any thoughts about the future of photography?
I think also just,
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say that I think also having things make a comeback. Just for example, like I remember someone posted an image of an in-flare camera image, just in-camera flare. And from what I know is, most of these traditional lenses, like Canon or anything else or Nikon, the gear is all the lenses are trying to be super sharp, right? Because everyone just wants to have the crispest, the clearest, the sharpest image. And here we are like, okay, embrace the blur. So I think, and then bring in camera flares, because that is my personal favorite, especially, with the lenses that, that I use. So I'm like, just having those things that you never thought that would make a comeback. I think just seeing those things come back is also something that is interesting.
Yeah. So a very, very valid point. It's even, you kind of see happening in fashion trends and trends all around the world right now. And, I think that can be a very potent tool to get to this place where we recognize that my hope for the future of photography is that it doesn't always have to be tack sharp and clean. Let's do what we do as creatives and experiment and show weird stuff and like step into it, right? I think about as Lensbaby, the brand, this idea of shoot extraordinary, that is self-defined. Who gets to say what extraordinary means but us as creatives? And so I want to say thank you to the panel. You guys are all amazing. And as I ask my last question, I just want to reiterate to everyone watching at the Shoot Extraordinary Conference how appreciative we are of you being here with us. The last question, and this is for the entire panel, and we will start with Craig, is if you could leave one piece of advice for someone about using Lensbaby, what would it be?
Limit your options. Go out, shoot with one aperture, point straight ahead if you've got a tiltable Lensbaby, and see what it does. And when you've found whether that resonates with you, go out and try a different one. But just limit your options. There's so many things, like Dana said, of getting to Hawaii and having this bag full of stuff. Don't get overwhelmed. Just choose one thing, limit it, and go out and see what you can make.
Great points. Jackie.
Well, I kind of asked myself a question, is Lensbaby a gift? Because I think it is, but I answered it myself. No, it's actually a reward. It's a reward for being nimble, for working hard, for taking risks. And I think that the one thing that I would like to leave everybody with is to be your authentic self. Work hard and you will be rewarded.
Shelley.
I say don't give up. I gave up after on my first Lensbaby after about 6 months. I'm like, I can't do this. And when I went back to it, it clicked. So I'd say just stick with it. If there's a learning curve, take all this amazing advice that was given by all these amazing photographers and live it and live your own story.
Kathleen.
Shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot. Sort of what Craig said, shoot different subjects, shoot wide, shoot far, shoot up close. You're not going to master anything if you don't use it.
True. Uta.
Well, I almost want to say use all the options. I feel Lensbaby is like a rainbow. And if you are used to writing with a pen or a pencil, and all of a sudden you get all these options with Lensbaby, and it feels like you have so many more colors, use it, play with it, be like a child. Don't take it too serious in the beginning and have fun while you do it.
Yeah, great points. Anne.
Find your heart. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to stay with your subject and really fully explore it. Just experiment, 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 and look at things from different angles and shoot in different ways. And what happens when you do that is you have those aha moments. You have those bits of creative ideas that enter the picture. So stay with it and really work it.
Joe.
I would just go back to reiterating what most of you all have said about practice. Just practice as much as you can. And for me, it is about just picking up one lens and getting, just using it for 30 days, 60 days, whatever your time frame is, but making sure that you use it completely till you exhaust every option available to you with that lens. And the second tip I think I would just also add is to take notes. I am more of an old school way where I actually write down things as well. You could, take mental notes. You could write down to see, okay, this is what happened when I did this. Or you could save all your, 10, 20 shots that you've taken, download it to your computer, and then take notes that way. Because I tend to study my images quite a bit just to see, okay, this is what I have done. Maybe this is what I need to do next time. So just looking back at your own work will help you realize, and it's not really a mistake, but you're all learning, right? So it's about, figuring out what you can do better the next time. So.
And Dana.
Well, I've already said this, but I'm going to say it again. It would be to embrace the imperfections. So my favorite quote, which I said in my video for the conference, is don't shoot what a moment looks like, shoot what it feels like. And these lenses allow me to do that. And so I think if what you are creating is resonating with you as the artist, with how you're feeling in that moment, just embrace it.
I love it. Great advice and tips. And I will leave you with this Shoot Extraordinary Conference. Photography is a gift for you, and only you get to determine what that means. And just as all of these incredible speakers and educators have shared with you today, that starts by doing. And I challenge you all to do a little bit more today. Shoot Extraordinary Conference, thank you so much. Speaker, thank you so much. You guys have all been amazing, and we'll see you guys really soon.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you,
Thank
Frank.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Dreamy artistic images.
Emotive and soulful imagery.
That extra dimension and quirkiness.
Really unique images.
Se olvidaron completamente.
Extraordinary results.
Creamy bokeh and a dreamy feel.
Creative and quirky landscapes.
Unique blur effect.
Fun flares.
Poetic, oniric look.
Something extraordinary.